Today we're going to do lesson number 3 of SQL. Today we're going to take a step back. If you've watched my first 2 videos, you've not only learned how to install SQL Server Express for free onto your home PC, you've learned how to, in lesson 2, do some queries that are pretty advanced with the query editor. And now in lesson 3, we're going to kind of take a step back and just quickly talk about some of the high-level aspects of SQL Server, and then we'll dive a little bit into some of the queries and things we can do. So if you look at SQL Server as this big, monstrous, scary vortex where you have to learn this other language to try to code in, then you're going to quickly get discouraged. However, if you look at it in comparison to something you may already use every day, like Excel, then it starts to get a lot less scary. And there are a ton of similarities between SQL and Excel. In fact, if you look at just this query right here, this could be just as easily something we would see in an Excel spreadsheet. And if we just right click and select all and copy with headers here, I'll even show you. And this is LibreOffice, but very similar to Excel, that we can paste this in here, and now we have something we may be more used to seeing. See, the two can be used almost interchangeably here, and you've got the same information that you would expect to see in a spreadsheet, but now you're learning SQL and you're able to grab this data out of the database directly versus waiting for somebody to send it to you. So database is really very similar to Excel, except that Excel lacks a lot of features that a database like SQL contains, such as the ability to organize data effectively across multiple databases, the ability to house millions and millions of records, the ability to get to that massive amount of data quickly, and the use of constraints, which you could do a little bit in Excel, but with a database it becomes far more effective. So there's security here, there's constraints on the type of data that you can put in, and so really the database takes it to a whole new level, the SQL database, or DBMS. The similarities, again, Excel uses columns, and then there's records within those columns. The same thing here with SQL. You can manipulate the data in Excel. You can also write code to manipulate it right here in SQL. And of course, as we talked about, Excel kind of lacks the security and robust data manipulation features that a DBMS has. That's why we have to use them. Now, additionally, SQL becomes really powerful with its options for automation, stored procedures, creating views, and that's some of the things that we're going to get into in far later lessons. But the power to fully automate reports so that they pull in the data you need, maybe from other sources, organize the data, break it out into tables, builds it into a package, emails it out to the sender every single day, even you can have it so that it does data manipulation checks. There is so much that you can do with SQL. All you have to do is take the time to learn it, so that's why you're here today. Some of the words that you're going to hear a lot that I haven't covered are things like schema, and really these are just representations of the DBMS data management system itself. Everything has a schema or sets of rules behind it, from the tables to the databases themselves to views that you create. So don't be scared hearing those words if you're reading other books or have done classes before. Objects really refers to any functional area of the database. Each section, again, object having its own property, security rules, and all those objects are stored on the server. You're going to hear the terms in other videos that folks may do about schemas and objects, and that may throw people off. Don't. It's really not something that a beginner has to worry themselves a whole lot with. They're just terminologies. They're not scary at all. So I did a quick pull here, but just to show you again, you can go to any table that you want and right click, select top 1000 rows, and you can instantly see what's inside that database. I showed you how you can easily right click, select all, copy with headers, and paste that directly into an Excel spreadsheet so you can begin manipulation. I also want to show you around the interface some more, because you can see I've got some things set up here like the Solutions Explorer and properties on the side. You've got all kinds of buttons and things over here. Again, don't let these things scare you. For the most part, you can go in here and explore and learn some things. As long as you're not removing, dropping, deleting, it's pretty hard to screw stuff up. And since we're using a sample database, we can always restore it if you do. So please feel free to go on and try to break something. But your interface is very similar to any Office or Microsoft product. You've got your taskbar up here. You've got all kinds of options that either come clear or gray out depending on what screen you're on. Really anywhere you can right click and you get all kinds of additional options here, such as the select top 1000 rows that we utilized. Over here in the Solutions Explorer, this just shows you different data elements that you'll be interested in probably later on as you get more comfortable with SQL. But to set up these views, you can just go to View and you can choose things that you want to see, like properties, etc., that I have listed here. Everything is fully customizable. You see this little cross that kind of came in the center. I can move it to the bottom, the top, anywhere I want. I can dock it over here. If you dock it, you kind of got to get it highlighted into that mid area there. Let's try this again. There we go. And now it's fully docked. If you want to hide it while you're writing queries, you can just click on that little pin. Don't worry, it's not gone forever. It's just right here. And you can bring them back and pin them back by clicking that pin there. It's just a little bit about the interface. Here you have your Object Explorer. Remember that word object that everybody gets scared about? And over here you have your queries. Now, one thing I want to point out is when you're running a query, you'll see multiple databases up here, and you want to make sure when you're running queries trying to follow along that you have AdventureWorks 2014 selected. If you don't, the query may not work. It'll be trying to run that query against another database. So anytime you're running queries, just make sure to check up here and see that AdventureWorks 2014 is running. Again, when I click New Query, it could default me to master depending on where I'm selected here in the Object Explorer. But you can just quickly change that and say I want to run the query off of the AdventureWorks database, and you're good to go. So we've kind of covered some of those high-level topics, but I do want to talk about, because we didn't discuss it a lot in our other videos, the select, from, insert, update, delete commands. So what you're really doing, and it looks like programming language, and with all the squiggly lines it could actually look scary, but at the end of the day it's kind of plain English. You're telling the database, select these columns from this database, and then you're adding any other commands. You don't have to have this one here for right now, just worry about the select from. You're adding in any other commands that you want after that. So select is saying I want these columns. I want address ID. I want address line 1. See them down here? I want city. I want state province ID. And it's just breaking them out by commas. That's all it's doing. And then the from statement saying where do you want that data from? Where is it? And in fact, SQL reads this from statement first, because logically, how our brains work, they kind of made it so that you're selecting what you want and then you're doing your from command. But SQL will execute this here first. It will execute the from. It will go, where am I looking for this data? Okay, AdventureWorks, great. Now what do I need? I need these columns, and I'm going to bring them back. And so if I run that, it's going to bring back those columns. Now in this statement we also have a top command, top 1000, but I can easily remove that, and that means it's just grabbing the top 1000 records, and that's what we did with the right click. I can easily remove that and just have the select there, and it's going to return everything that meets these columns qualifications, everything in the database. You don't want to do that on a live production server, by the way. So not scary at all, and you've just got some basic commands: select, insert, update, delete, where, a where clause that you see below here. where address line 2 is not null. Now look, because remember we just highlighted and we ran this code here, and when we did that, let's go ahead and stop that query. When we did that, we've got all of these nulls here. And maybe I don't want to see those, so I put a where statement, address line 2 is not null. So then if I execute that, look, all of those nulls in address line 2 are gone now. So all you're doing is you're just telling the database what you want and where you want it from and some conditions around that. So very, very simple. Now, like I said, I promised this would be a quick video today, so one of the last things I want to touch on very briefly is views. Views can be very powerful because you can start saving, especially if you're in a production environment, views on data that you use every day or consistently. So you're not having to go and write these queries every single time. So if I wanted to create a new view, I could just right click on views, click new view. I'm going to select the table that I want to pull from, and I can select multiple tables here. I'm going to click add and close this out. And look, remember when we went through the query editor before, it automatically creates a link between these for the business entity ID, the password, maybe I want first and last name and the person's title, and that's all I want to see. I want to be able to see that view quickly every day. So then I can just click file, save, and I want to name this person view 1. Click OK, and now, and you see it writes the code for us just like the query editor. Now I can go down here and refresh. Remember, you always got to refresh when you add something new. And my person 1 view is here. If I select top 1000 rows, I'm only going to get those items that I selected. And I could go back and save that view with a where statement as well if we wanted to, so we could get rid of the nulls maybe in the title. So you can set up views. So as you're writing code, you may want to also incorporate that code into views so you can always go back to it and see what you've done in the past. So the last thing I want to go back to is I mentioned several different statements, but what you need to practice with, what you need to really understand is the select from statements. And then next is where you can put some conditioning on it. Then group by, having, and order by. So select right here, from, and then where we can put conditions like is not null, group by, having, and order by. Those are the commands that you really want to focus on because everything else builds upon that. So I've shown you around the interface today. I've shown you some quick ways you can create some views with your code. You can also, as you know, save any of your queries at any point. Save query as, and you could save your queries for running later. You've started to understand how SQL processes the database. Hopefully it's not scary to you anymore, and in our next videos we're going to dive even deeper. So in the meantime, get in there, try to break something, leave some comments below if you have some questions on something I may not have covered or you want in the next video, and I hope this was helpful for you.